Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for coming. My name is Richard Cope. I'm the Senior Trends Consultant at Mintel, and we're going to be looking at what's happening with travel futures. Mintel travel futures in the sense that we're going to show you a little bit of the data we've got in terms of consumer data from the UK and China, the data we've got about tourism. But I'm not going to dwell too long on the stats. I'm conscious that you're not going to be able to sort of view the stats that well on that screen, but if you get in touch with us, we'll be able to provide this presentation, that information to you later on. The other side of Mintel Travel Futures, though, isn't just about the data, it's about our trend service as well. So a lot of what I'm going to show you today is the trends we think are going to be driving the travel industry going forward, and some of the best innovations we're seeing from around the world which really respond to those needs going forward. So as I say, in the first section, we'll look at some of the consumer data we've got about people's travel plans, people's travel patterns as well, and then we'll move on to the big drivers we're seeing going forward. So we're going to look at what's changing demographically going forward. We need to get away from this notion that we live in a world of the family with 2.4 children. We're going to look at the demographics which are growing in the next 20 years. Then we're going to look at some of the technological changes we're seeing and the opportunities these are affording for the travel industry as well. And in the final section, we'll look briefly at the journey from A to B, never mind the holiday destination. What are the opportunities around the period of transit? So let's start some data. As I say, I'm not going to dwell on this because of the size of the screen, but also this first bit of data here is actually obviously not Mintel data initially. This is basically IPS data. In terms of what's seeing in terms of overseas volume of travel, so a fairly static picture, but what we're seeing going forward is modest growth predicted through 2014 through to 2019, anything between 1% and 3% in terms of overseas volume. What I really want to get into is terms of intentions. And again, it's a fairly static picture because we ask people what their holiday plans are during the course of this year. The intention really is to go on holiday more, 16%, balanced out by people going on holiday less at 15%. So again, very static picture. In terms of the short-haul market, obviously, I want to talk quite a lot in this presentation about the seniors market, who we recognise in travel as being very important, but neglected often in terms of how we market to them. You can see 55 plus, 41% of people we've spoken to taken short-haul holiday in that 12-month period, not as much as the younger, more sort of family dynamics we see, but a very key demographic going forward. And if we look at long haul, extremely tied to higher incomes, as we might expect. We're going to look at how much of that high income is tied in with those older demographics as well, directly tied to it. So moving away from the UK shortly, let's just pause to look at what the key holiday areas are. So in terms of the domestic market, actually city breaks, family holidays, edging out beach holidays slightly. Short-haul beaches still dominant, but we've got pretty strong cultural components with city breaks around 40% as well. Long-haul, again, dominated by beaches, dominated by the warm weather, but again, strong cultural components in terms of city breaks, 44% of long-haul holidays fitting into that category as well. Cultural sightseeing holidays, 30% for long-haul too. And sorry, I want to dwell on that just quickly because I think one important thing to mention here about the sort of cultural sightseeing city break element of short haul. I mean, I think low-cost airlines here, we need to sort of talk about this briefly because often I think in this country that gets dismissed as being something associated with stag parties, hen do's, etc. People sneer towards it. But I don't think you can underestimate the cultural component that is introduced certainly to the British holiday psyche. I think it made it very affordable for people to go on cultural sightseeing city break trips, and that is why we're starting to see this grow as an important component of what people want from their holidays at all levels. It's definitely kind of, I think, made the British traveller more cultural because they're able to sample that, suck it and see, decide it's something they wanted on their holidays generally. Now, in terms of the holiday planning process, when we talk to consumers about this, obviously, in modern life, everything is about convenience, algorithms, fast tracking. But the most dominant thing we're seeing is that despite all these options, this wealth of opportunities we have to explore, the thing we're starting to do more is actually be more careful, be more cautious, make a more considered decision. It's almost as if it's something we're enjoying doing, spending more time, enjoying all these multiple resources we have to help decide where we're going to go. So moving away from the UK to the Chinese consumer. Now, we do consumer research at Mintel for Chinese middle-class consumers. 89% of Chinese middle-class consumers have taken holidays. And in terms of, that's obviously the overseas market is much less prevalent than that at 28% compared with domestic holidays, 86%. But obviously the volume of that is sufficient to make them such an important market. Now, in terms of what the Chinese consumer is most interested in, it's cuisine and culture which leads the way. And repeatedly, it's cuisine which comes out top in terms of what people want. People want local features in their accommodation. That's coming in third at 45%. So food is really leading the way in terms of the heart of the Chinese consumer and what they want from their holidays, right down to at 23%, people wanting to learn how to make local food whilst on holiday as well. Now, specifically to look at retail, in terms of what this is synonymous with the Chinese outbound market. The retail element of tourism is crucially important. And again, it's local food specialities which people are most keen on purchasing their holiday. 94% have bought local food products whilst on holiday. That's followed by local crafts, 86%, clothes and footwear at 80%, personal care products and cosmetics at 78%, tied with accessories, perfume falling in further down at 69%. So the retail component is, something which is a huge part of that market, as we know. And I know anecdotally people will talk about tours, say, coming to England, and you get this sort of the classic thing people talk about is half a day spent around Oxford University's colleges, 1.5 days spent at Bicester Village as part of that. So the retail component is essential. And the other thing we're finding about the Chinese market, the actual organised side of the market is particularly strong. 54% of people, in terms of their holiday planning, are using online-only travel agencies. And, obviously word of mouth and talking to fellow travellers is coming in second place at 47%, forums at 44%. So it's a multi-platform, multi-resource approach. But the organised industry at an online level is still the most popular resource for those travellers. So I want to move on really to what we're seeing from a trends perspective. Just to sum up on the data front, though, that we are seeing modest growth going forward, predicted by our travel analysts going forward for UK overseas growth. The short-haul market dominated by 1634s, 55 plus, but certainly the long-haul market dominated by those richer households, as we would expect. And the traditional beach holiday sector has been, overtaken in the domestic market by, city breaks. And city breaks, culture breaks are closing in short haul, and they're closing in long haul as well. And we're becoming more meticulous in terms of our planning. All the convenience options we have aren't seeming to make this booking process any shorter. It's making it more considered, to the point where it's something we're enjoying, almost savouring whilst we're doing. To switch to the Chinese market, 1 in 4 middle-class consumers are holidaying overseas. Food, local experiences, the things they want to involve on their holiday the most. Holiday purchases, synonymous with this, the retail market integral to it, and foods, crafts, and fashion leading the way there. Online agencies, the main way of organising those holidays, followed by peers and word of mouth. So let's move on from that to look at what's happening in terms of demographics and the changes we're going to see going forward. Now, here I'm going to look at some trends which are shaping all levels of consumer spending, consumer activity, and we'll look at what this means for travel. So we need to look at the idea of the home of the future here now. And I'm not going to get particularly Jetsons or anything. We're really talking about household composition. And we need to get away from this notion that we all live in homes, married couples, 2.4 children. We need to get away from that, because that really isn't the norm in terms of targeting and marketing. So this is really going to impact on the needs and the marketing requirements we have to target these demographics. So we're seeing less 2.4. This nuclear family is being eroded against other areas. So what we are seeing, if we stay with the notion of families and children, we're actually seeing a rise in single parents. So proportion of US households of children that are single parent grown long term from 20 to 30% over the last sort of 30-year period. And we're seeing this sort of happening in loads of places around the world. We do consumer data in Brazil, finding that half of mothers in Brazil single or separated in 2010. So we're seeing the emergence of this single parent family demographic in the family holiday market. Here in the UK, 3 million UK children growing up in single-parent families at record levels. And the share of single-parent families amongst those households that do have children, see that starting to grow from anything towards a quarter of families to 40% of families come 2025, come 2030 are going to be single-parent families in that regard. So, within the sort of family market, what we're seeing, we've recently done a lot of research talking to mums, and mums have a clean sweep, it seems, of deciding what technology to buy, where to eat out, not just what clothes to buy for children, where the family goes on holiday. If you ask mums, 86% of mums say they decide on where they go on holiday. Now, they're able to answer multiple questions here. 53% say their partner has a role in deciding as well, but they see themselves as the dominant force in family selections in that regard. We've talked a little bit about families and children, but actually, children are a diminishing demographic proportionally as a whole. We're seeing less children coming onto the market. So you see stories like this playing out in things like the toy industry. Groups like Toys R Us struggling because the market is diminishing in terms of it. And that's why you'll see so many toys coming on the market targeted at adults, in terms of nostalgia, in terms of things associated with other areas. The market's having to expand in that regard. I apologise for some of the directness of some of the images we snap as we go around London and elsewhere to illustrate this presentation, but basically, most of the developed world is low fertility. 2.1 is the sort of level we need to see to get a restocking, if you like, of children coming on the market to keep this ticking over. Now, even in the UK, where we've had something of a spike in a birth rate, I think our fertility rate is about 1.8. So actually, that's falling below the normal tick over rate we need at 2.1. And actually, we're seeing fewer children coming on the market. So family holiday is less important. What we are seeing is a growth in couples without children. This is a growing demographic. So going forward in OECD member countries here to 2025 or 2030, you can see the increases we're seeing in couples without children. Korea, 72%. And a lot of this is about changing conventions, changing taboos. And, I've seen doomy forecasts about at this rate, Korea is actually going to die out as a country within the next 50 years if they don't address this. But this is an emerging demographic. Couples who are free of children, take the holidays they want to, enjoy the things they want to as well. Something else we're seeing in demographics is a growth in single occupancy households. In Europe, Germany has the highest figures for this. 37% of households are single occupancy. Now, this is tied in with the aging population profile to a degree, which we will look at in more detail going forward. But it is part of a bigger story. We're seeing this in the United States long term as well. 3 in 10 households have just one person, double the proportion we saw in the 1960s. So all of this is tying into a picture of people wanting individuality in their holidays, being able to choose holidays for themselves the way they want them, but also wanting holidays with a social element, sometimes an organised social element behind that as well. Single-person households in the UK, 10.9 million of them, up from just 6.8 million in 2006. We get to 2031, that's the level we're going to see. So the share of single-person households, we saw that in Germany now, is already 37%. 40% is going to become the norm across most OECD countries by around 2025, by around 2030. So this creates this notion of me time, individuality, tailored holidays, customized holidays, holidays which really sort of meet the needs of customization and individuality. 48% of Brazilian singles, we say, they have fewer responsibilities as a result of their status. When we talk to Canadian consumers, they're saying they prefer to spend their leisure time alone. People are actually, enjoying this status in this regard. When we talk to Chinese 20, 29-year-olds, 70% of them have traveled alone in the past 12 months. So this is becoming a norm, sort of focus on this new individual travel. So we are seeing examples of how the industry responds to that. Initiatives like EasyNest, saw a couple of years ago, basically, helping you save money in terms of connecting with other travelers, taking that car share experience into accommodation. So we are seeing initiatives to do this in terms of saving money. So one of the big opportunities going forward is going to be connecting people. And I don't mean that in a hookup dating way necessarily. I just mean sort of finding fellow travelers. We'll look at that in a bit more detail later on. So single parents, growing as a component in family holidays. If we look within the concept of the family holiday market, mums need recognizing as the deal breakers, as key decision makers in terms of how we approach and market them across all family holidays, not just single parent holidays as well. Children diminishing proportionally as a demographic. We're going to look at some of the demographics which are increasing going forward. So more market for adult, child-free leisure activities and holidays in that regard as well. Single parents, lone travelers, both of them need help in terms of information, resources during their holiday, connection resources as well. Something else for the industry to look at. We'll look at how technology might facilitate that shortly. So let's look specifically at the aging population. So we live in a society focused on youth. I get asked to come present on millennials incessantly. But the biggest demographic, the demographic with the money, is going to be seniors. So huge proportional increase. By 2035, again, in OECD countries, increase of 8 to 13% of the population are going to be in that demographic. And crucially, not all of them are going to be doing what these French guys are doing here and enjoying their retirement. A lot of these people are going to be continuing to work, and that's going to change the kind of holiday market we see as well. So some of that assumption that this older market is just going to be about, long-haul, assisted, expensive, long-duration holidays, some of that market's going to shift back towards shorter duration refreshment breaks as well. But this is the demographic that's got the money, and I think we in the travel industry have been more aware of this possibly than other sectors for a while. So if you look at this data here from the US, you can see if we match, look at household income, look at the median net worth of the 65 plus demographic and the 75 plus demographic compared with people under 35, which is where a lot of our marketing attention goes. These are the people who've managed to get on the property ladder. They have those resources. They've accumulated wealth in that regard. And we see the same thing here in the UK. 31% of UK seniors living in households with total wealth greater than £500,000. If we go down to 25 to 44-year-olds, just 17% of them can boast that. So at Mintel, we do a sort of tracker where we ask people about their financial situation at the end of each month. We ask them, is your situation healthy? Have you got money to spend on luxuries or what you enjoy in life? 24% of people say they have. If we ask that question to over 65s, it goes up to 44%. These are the people with the money to spend on leisure and travel. Again, same thing happens when we talk to Chinese consumers. Much higher results in terms of people having that, maybe not the time as much as we had previously, but the money certainly and the resources to invest in this. So again, asking people about their habits in terms of what they're doing, in terms of our confidence tracker. 45% of seniors had booked a holiday in the past 3 months. Average was just 29%. If we go to China, 43% of over 55s we've spoken to want to try out new destinations they've not been to yet. They still have this wanderlust, this desire to explore new areas. And then retirees in Brazil going on holiday more than they did previously as well. So I mentioned this is changing though. The notion of what seniors are is changing. Forget your conventions. They're changing in terms of they're continuing to work, they're getting divorced, they're dating, they're sexually active. It's a different market to what we maybe was 10, 20 years ago. So we have the labour force, the penetration of seniors in the labour market growing in the UK. We're seeing that grow in Germany as well. I apologise for any Germans in the audience suggesting this is what German guys do with their retirement and put hats on and head down the beer cellar. But we're seeing increased participation in the labour market from over 60s in Germany. We're seeing the same thing happen in Spain as well. Some of this is happening because people financially are being forced to continue working. Some of it's happening because people want to continue working. They want to remain engaged. And all of this is fantastic news for the cosmetics industry, for the fashion industry, because typically our data would show get past 65, interest in that just drops off the cliff. Now they're going to continue buying this to maintain energetic, competitive in the workplace, fending off competition from younger colleagues. And the same goes for the kind of holidays they're going to take are going to be about re-energizing, being boosted in that regard. They're also going to be influenced more by younger colleagues as well in terms of awareness and aptitude in things like technology too. But we've got to sort of change our marketing approach. It's tricky. How do you market to this demographic? So when we talk to Chinese consumers, they say there's a lack of products designed for people their age. When we talk to US older consumers, again, advertisements, for China, 47% say there's a lack of advertisements that target the elderly appropriately. 63% of US 65 to 74-year-olds get insulted quite regularly by ads they find that are patronizing. This isn't really a demographic which you can call old until maybe you get past 90 going forward. So we need to see, generally, not just in travel, but more aspirational, age-appropriate advertising. And the beauty industry is an industry which does a very good job of this. You've got brands like L'Oreal, brands like NARS, using aspirational age-appropriate models, Charlotte Rampling, Helen Mirren. We need to see more of this across all consumer sectors. Same thing with John Vivatos. Not every senior traveller you're targeting is Iggy Pop. Iggy Pop is 68, 69, I think. But we do need to see more brands like this which embrace this in this kind of way. Because we've got to remember who this demographic is. They're not going to concerts as much as young consumers, but this is the demographic which invented that post-war popular culture we all enjoy. They're not much different from anybody else whatsoever. So the reason we have all these new purpose-built arenas like the O2 or the Liverpool Echo Arena in this country isn't because of young people. It's because of older consumers who've got the money, they want comfort. Think about who's on stage in these venues. It's this demographic often. Also, they're coming back on the market in terms of dating. We hear all this sort of furore in the media about growing divorce. Well, the only area where divorce really is growing is amongst seniors in this country and in other Western European countries as well. So traditionally, you weren't really allowed by society to get divorced in your 60s. Social taboos against doing that. You'd have to die with regrets. But now people are deciding, no, they've got a second chance to meet someone special or meet a bunch of average people, whichever way you want to look at it. But they are coming back onto the market. We've seen that in the UK. We've seen that in France. We've seen that in Germany as well. Across lots of European countries, average age of divorce going up. So these are people who are dating, the people who have freedoms to pursue those single individual holidays we saw. And they are contributing to that rise in single occupancy households we looked at. They're sexually active as well, for longer to previous demographics. So all of this is another barrier going away, which used to distinguish the older elements of this demographic from others. It's another barrier, another separation falling away. So they're the key spending market, seniors, in terms of their resources, and it's going to be more, I think, in the future about balancing work, career with holiday rather than just a simple freedom of retirement holidays, as we saw. Advertising needs to sort of, meet their needs, meet who they are as well. And we need to consider things that, some of this group is going to be single, some of them are going to be sexually active. That we need to think about that, recognize who they are. One other thing to think about in terms of demographics, we're seeing this polarization. I've talked about a growth in single occupancy households. The other area of growth we're seeing is 3G multiple occupancy households. You've got grandchildren, their parents, grandparents all living in one house. So what we're seeing, part of what's driving this, is millennials living at home with their parents. They can't afford to launch from the nest. So huge proportions, 36% of 18-31-year-olds in the US living with their parents, 37% of 16 to 34s in this country living with their parents as well. And we're getting towards a more what we might call Latin picture. If I sort of narrow this down to 25, 34-year-olds, so you don't quite get the same similarity. But, we are seeing a picture sort of more akin to what we consider in Spain and Italy. More younger people living at home with their parents. Major positive around all of this. Well, for one thing is they're going to want to escape from each other. So it's good news for leisure. It's good news for travel. People are going to want to sort of get away from this venue to a degree. But a major legacy of this is all these millennial sons and daughters are going to be the in-house tech guys, the in-house tech girls who raise parental awareness and aptitude in technology, whether it's sort of click and collect shopping, whether it's booking online, whether it's using travel apps, all of that. The appeal of that, the readiness people embrace that will grow amongst those older consumers as a result. Other demographic changes, or not actually, this data's misleading in the sense, there appears to be this huge growth in same-sex households. That cannot really be possible. It's not like this got invented in the last 5 years. It's basically what we're seeing is, people, I think, being more comfortable about, this being registered in terms of happening statistically. But again, this is just a general lesson about being more inclusive in your marketing. So we're seeing, major food brands becoming more inclusive in their marketing in terms of the diversity of people they show in their advertising. We need the same thing to happen in travel as well. And, we're seeing, changing attitudes amongst younger people. So this is really a story of society becoming more progressive rather than demographic change. Despite what appears to be happening in terms of a growth, it's just more people being happy in terms of answering in that way. But, a quick marketing lesson, you can take two different approaches to this. We had Barille's chairman in Italy anecdotally said they would never use same-sex couples in their marketing imagery, which drove Bertoli to respond with this Pasta and Love for All campaign, going for the bigger demographic, going for the more progressive cause. And that's just a good example of brands sort of embracing this going forward. I've used a food example, but the same thing goes for travel. Less about segmentation, more about diversity. I think that approach works best in this regard, probably also for the aging demographic as well. Talking of demographics, pets are a new demographic because I talked about children declining proportionally. That's because there are huge numbers of pets. Basically, particularly in areas like Asia, it's still a growing market. Pet ownership can be a relatively new thing in some countries. So we're getting very strong growth in that regard. And basically, more households in the United States have dogs than have children 15 or under. There's more pets. So the travel industry needs to embrace this as well. 56% of adults in the UK online have a pet in their household as well. And basically, we won't cut back on things for our pets. We won't cut back in food. We won't really cut back in travel either. It's a member of the family. So the travel industry is starting to embrace this. So Delta have this pet tracking device. I'm not really quite sure how this works, because if your pet's in the hold on a long-haul flight and there's a problem, I'm not sure what we actually do. But we are seeing a lot of things come on the market about acknowledging this as a demographic. So, as I said, we have these three multi-generational households. Holidays can be an escape from that. Multi-generational households are also going to make older demographics more tech-savvy and more open to those approaches. Society's more diverse, society's more progressive. We need to stay up with that. And pets definitely need to be incorporated into holidays in a more sophisticated manner going forward. Let's look at what's happening with technology. We have a big project at Mintel called Access Anything Anywhere, where we're looking at devices just becoming integral to our lives rather than being just communication devices. And penetration in this country may be starting to sort of plateau. But if we look at things globally, by 2020, 4 billion of the adult population will have smartphones, a doubling from the situation we have now at 2015. 25 billion connected things will be in use. So here we get into the Internet of Things. We're talking about smart home devices, smart devices in hotels, etc., smart cars. So we're starting to see this happen more and more in holiday destinations. This is something tourists are going to expect no matter where they're going. So we have things like, Cuba being opened up to public Wi-Fi as well. Our trend spotters around the world are feeding us these stories going forward. We've got, charitable dimensions. And I think this suggests opportunities for travel companies as well in terms of CSR. So more and more of the world remote locations being opened up to Wi-Fi connectivity. And some of the most radical innovation we're seeing in this regard tends to be in places which are very remote, because we see a lot of this happening in remote countries in Africa, certainly in rural areas where connectivity becomes something we're more dependent on. It's more important as a resource than maybe it is in cities. So we're seeing innovations like Brick here to sort of help you keep you connected in remote locations. So this is something consumers are, expecting more and more. So even if you're in remote areas, we get things like these solar-powered cell phone chargers being used in Uganda as well. One of our clients, who I won't mention which company they were, thought that was actually a phone, but it's not. That's basically a solar-powered charger they're using to plug into their phone. So wherever you go, that ability to have connectivity is something travellers are going to expect more and more. We'll talk about their desire to actually disconnect from it as well, but the availability is something people are expecting. So at the moment, in our normal lives, a quarter of us are using our devices to find things to do or visit locally. And this is something which becomes more important when we are on holiday. So also, in terms of how digital eras changed us, we all have more friends than we did 20 years ago. We have more social connections, apparently. And, people realize that the internet has become a way to socialize and meet people. Remember those high proportions of single travelers we looked at earlier, high proportions of single occupancy households. So we're starting to see how the kind of location-based services, which were sort of espoused by things like Grindr and Tinder and dating apps, being co-opted in different ways. So we've seen Marriott Hotels and MIT a couple of years ago develop 6 Degrees, which basically puts you in contact with people who share your business connections based on which hotel you're in, based on which city you're in. So this ability to network is something people are willing to embrace in this much more fluid social society. So if you look at Tinder as a dating app, obviously extremely successful, 196 countries this is working in. And, Sean Rad, we went to see him speak recently, and he basically talks about his vision for Tinder going beyond being a hookup app or a dating app to being something like this, something where people will use it to find people in travel destinations or find people to do activities with them. Now, I think they'll probably have to white label this and use different branding, but, he envisages it as being something like this, like Zoba we see in China. So this allows you to, find people to perform services for you, whether it's being a travel guide, or, it's going beyond the kind of services which are mainstream in terms of things like Uber. People as a resource. The availability of this in travel destinations is what Tinder have got their eye on. So we're seeing other ways people are using location services. Google Plus in Mexico creating a service where you can find people to play different sports with you. All of this is the kind of thing which will appeal to single travelers or people who want to try something new with local people. In Hong Kong, we have this platform, Plando. It does the same thing, connecting with people who are interested in going biking, swimming, whatever it may be. So social connections made on holiday is definitely an area to explore. And in terms of smart home technology, it's on holiday where we're going to experience a lot of this stuff for the first time. So things like smart rooms, smart locks are being put forward by things like Starwood Hotels, allowing you to use your phone to unlock your room. This is the first place we're going to become aware of this. Same thing, similar things being pioneered by Virgin Hotels, basically, using apps to control your room, control temperature, unlock the room, and also give you local information. As soon as you basically book this, this starts building possible itineraries for you on your holiday as well. So all of this is a way to savor and prolong the holiday too. Other things that are getting smarter are our vehicles as well. And this goes back to a lot of what we're seeing in the aging population. The reason vehicles are getting smarter is to make the experience more like a passenger experience, to make it more passive, to keep older consumers behind the wheel for as long as possible. So that's why we have, Volvo having, information about accidents, weather, etc., as well as them collecting data like Google do to create a resource. Virtual reality is something, and augmented reality is something we're talking about a lot at Mintel. It's one of our big predictions for next year, something we think is going to mainstream. Because we have things like Oculus Rift coming on the market commercially. Deutsche Bank's talking about 1.5 million of these headsets being bought by consumers or businesses next year. It's not all about immersive gaming, though. So 50% of consumers are interested in using VR headsets to walk around, the Louvre, or walk around another virtual museum, going on cultural tours, trying out things before you go there. It's about reassurance. In the same way, 47% of consumers we've spoken to are interested in using VR headsets, maybe at travel agents, maybe using apps, to virtually explore different resorts, different hotels. So this isn't just about gaming escapism. This is about reassurance, being sure that you want to part with this money on a big ticket item in this regard. And if we don't ask consumers specifically about virtual reality and just say, are you interested in watching online videos to help in the decision-making process, 53% agree with that. And that's basically what virtual reality is in a more powerful guise. So, this is very, very prevalent. And some brands are doing this at low level, embracing things like Google Cardboard. Obviously, one of the key apps on Google Cardboard, if you've tried it, is to be able to virtually walk around Paris or Tokyo. So the opportunities for tourist boards are very, very clear in this regard. And everybody who puts this on looks like that when they're doing it too. So we're starting to see more and more virtual tours of galleries, of tourist destinations going forward. Very easy, very easy to do. You can buy a 360-degree VR camera to start filming this content for about £300. Not difficult for you to do at all. So very affordable in terms of publicising your B&B, publicising your Airbnb, indeed. So the tourism industry is starting to embrace the possibilities of this. So immersive entertainment being explored by Qantas as a sort of, deluxe form of in-flight entertainment. And then, people using things like virtual surfing as part of their entertainment roster. Thomas Cook's been using VR to let people virtually explore Sensido resorts, make an informed decision. So it's really about reassurance going forward. Marriott offering room service, bringing this to your room as a way of exploring this as part of the entertainment option as well. Beacons is the other big area of tech we expect to mainstream next year. Now, beacons basically being devices which typically in shops but can also work in leisure venues. If you turn on your Bluetooth, you can connect with it, connect with the app. It'll recognize you've walked into the store, into the hotel, into the resort, who you are. You can be sent discounts, sent alerts, geotagged. You can walk into a particular location, unlock secret content, things like that. It can track where you are, track where your friends are. So this has been available for a while. But the reason we think it's going to grow is because it's going beyond, we previously just had Apple's iBeacon. The availability of this is expanding with Eddystone from Google, which means you won't necessarily have to download an app for a particular hotel or a particular store to use it. And consumers have some trepidation about this, but really the key thing to remember is you are in control. You have to turn on your Bluetooth to partner with this, and it can give you discounts, free content, secret information. So the Dutch are really embracing this. So in Amsterdam, having this beacon mile being created. At all these different points, you get to unlock, learn particular information about the area of town you're in, discounts, offers that might be on, information, historical information, culture information, where to eat there. It can be very, very empowering for a tourist in a new city. We've seen zoos like in Turin use this as well. It knows where you are in the zoo, what enclosure you're at. You're unlocking extra information in that regard. We've seen it used as a queue jumping system at fun fairs and things like that as well. It can help you jump the queue in that regard going forward. And again, this can help you jump the queue in terms of things like bars. It can remember, you can imagine this working really well in hotels if you're staying there for a week or 2 weeks as well. It learns your preferences, makes suggestions, helps you order ahead, helps you save time, helps you build tabs in that regard as well. Now, having all of that being said, this digital detox campaign is actually quite a few, 3 years old now, I think. But consumers we talk to, all ages and all countries, do say, I'm a bit overconnected. There is this desire to disconnect to a degree. Now, this isn't a Luddite trend. This isn't anti-technology. It's just consumers recognize the need. They don't always want to be connected. They want to have some control back in their lives. So digital detox holidays, where you hand in your device and your tablet at reception, got a 15% discount, typically did happen in fabulous places like the Grenadines, where connection was pretty awful anyway, so it made sense for them to do it. But I think the appeal of going to low coverage areas, low coverage destinations will start to increase. Because again, we talk to consumers in China, there's a sense that, this can infringe on your holiday because you're always connected with the office, with your job. It makes life seem fast. It's difficult to disconnect from your job. And business travelers themselves feel they particularly need to disconnect in their holidays. UK holidaymakers are also talking about how, they do feel difficult to switch off. It can compromise holidays. Almost half of us do access our work emails whilst we're on holiday. What we're seeing is visceral experiences, sensory experiences like immersion in terms of diving, water sports, being something that consumers do associate with an opportunity to get away from this. This is something you can really maximize on holiday. Same thing, outdoor activities, outdoor enthusiasts talk about this as a great way to escape technology. And these are things we can do on holiday and start to get a degree of control on a holiday. Now, for this to work, we need sympathetic employers. Now, Volkswagen in the United States in 2012 actually started blocking people's access to work service after 6 o'clock because their view was that people were spreading themselves too thinly. They recognized we need to get back to that pre-digital era where you can switch on, you can switch off. And you enjoy re-energizing, refreshing yourself, having leisure, and you come back focused, recharged, ready for work. That is their corporate view. And I think more and more companies will adopt this going forward. The moment where we're seeing switch off playing out is really typically in restaurants, hospitality sector, get these cell phone parking services to bring you back to focused meal times, focused conversations as well. We're seeing it play out in tourism as well with things like these tech creches where you can put your devices away so you can enjoy the countryside of the New Forest for an hour as well. So this is something we're starting to see play out. We're seeing, again, immersive, visceral, physical experiences in the wild being marketed as an opportunity to disconnect with Facebook Free Fridays in Ireland. And the way this is going to work is if it does start to gain some alternative outsider credibility. I'm not saying this brand from the US, Folk Rebellion, necessarily nails that, but they're doing fashion lines, clothing, which celebrates a degree of disconnection. And we're seeing things like music festivals, which are completely unplugged, giving you the opportunity to have a detox for a day or a weekend as well. So this is a component of holidays, something which can possibly grow. But the flip side of that is things like this. I really like this example from this Swedish band, John Moose. So they basically geotagged their album. So basically to sort of areas of woodland. If you could prove you're in that area, the album would work. So it can work both ways. We looked at the geotagging you use from beacons. I like the idea on holidays you can uncover secret locations and secret content as well. But it's about sort of quality experiences and segmentation, I think. So before we quickly move on to look at commuting, let's look at some key takeaways from this. So travelers do expect connectivity, even in particularly remote areas. And it's in sort of remote areas where we're seeing the greatest innovations to provide it. And I think a lot of the sort of hookup approaches we've seen from dating sites, Tinder and things like that, will start increasingly get co-opted for friend finders, travel guide finders, resource finders, and things like that going forward as well. In terms of smart home technology, smart car technology, holidays is where we're prepared to try that out. You see great partnership opportunities between brands in that regard. VR isn't just about escapism. It's about reassuring people that, yes, this resort, this hotel, this gallery really is worth going to before I part with my money. Beacons can offer convenience, help us jump the queue, and we definitely want opportunities to switch off as well. So degrees of control, low coverage will appeal. To talk about holidays, I want to briefly talk about the period in transit. We have a trend called transhumers, which looks at this journey from A to B and the marketing opportunities this creates, but also how the journey can be quite unhealthy, and we need opportunities to make this healthier as well. So the journey from A to B is creating opportunities for it to receive our goods in new ways. Think about us buying presents, buying gifts, buying duty-free and things like that, and it being dropped off at intermediary airport locations. Well, this kind of thing we're seeing from Amazon and DHL, where products get delivered to the boot of your car and things like this. This kind of convenience we'll start to expect on our holidays as well. We expect smarter luggage, smarter traveling as well. We've got personal valet services, people transporting your luggage for you. Consumers are going to want to outsource lots of this. They want things to be more seamless in that regard going forward. In terms of the information we can get in transit, our expectations around that are becoming more sophisticated as well, whether it's local information, privileged information too. We're seeing that playing out in Beijing. Curated ebooks people can access in transit. Transit can be a drag as well, so there's great marketing opportunities to relieve the stress of travel. Here's a great one from Carlsberg, waiting for your bags to come out onto the conveyor. Free beer coming out onto the conveyor at the airport as well. So great marketing opportunities available there. The best patriotic kind of traveller-focused marketing I've seen recently is definitely from Canadian Brew and Molson. So they cited these great partnership with the Canadian Tourist Board potential here. They cited these vending machines, these refrigerators in European state capitals, giving you free beer. But to get your 2 free beers, you have to find a Canadian. You need a Canadian passport where you can scan, then it's going to give you 2 free beers. So it's patriotic, it's social, it's promoting interaction with people from that country. And it's got a nice postscript, because these went back to Canada, and they were still giving out free beers to Canadians. But here you had to prove your credentials by doing a passable rendition of the Canadian national anthem. So great examples of patriotic, the kind of marketing which work for tourist boards and food brands. And then, we see other gimmicks and initiatives around the simple act of transit. So take on something like a smart Oyster card here from Beijing, something which also doubles as a fitness tracker. How active are you being on your holiday? Are you going to get rewarded by particular tourist partners in regard for that as well? And, in places like San Francisco, getting towards Silicon Valley, in terms of the connectivity opportunities we expect in transit, this is a view of where we're going in the future. Most public transport in America is nowhere near this, as we know. But, this is the kind of expectations consumers will have in terms of the degree of connectivity and ease of transit going forward. Also, there's an opportunity to be more analog and more playful in terms of the entertainment we provide. So we have Qantas performing services like this, stories for different journeys, matching particular short stories and novels to the destination, to the flight path, curated content matched towards it in that regard. And transit, I still think most of the entertainment we get in transit hasn't really changed conceptually in 20 or 30 years. But we do see sterling examples like this one from SNCF, allowing people to sort of learn languages whilst they're in transit as well. And travel, as we know, particularly in business travel, is very unhealthy. It's sedentary lifestyles are involved in this. And we do see initiatives around airports, like this one in Helsinki, allowing people to do things like yoga and Pilates whilst at airports. Examples like this one from Schiphol, where you can basically exercise and charge up your devices at the same time. So you see lots of innovations in these places, in between places. Airports are still the places where we are seeing capsule hotels grow and expand if we're not seeing them away from airports. Transit is unhealthy as well in terms of germs, the old cliche of, picking up something on the flight back. So I think people are going to buy into more things like this. Antibacterial surfaces, something to see more and more of. People are paying premiums to stay in hotels which have things like this as well. And this will become more commonplace too. And, there's an opportunity to make transit more entertaining, more visually stimulating, more culturally stimulating as well. Even at a mundane level, what buses appear like as well, or denoting, efforts like this to denote which bus you're going to get. Bus stops themselves can be replaced by interactive art spaces. Great promotional opportunities to turn a bus stop to actually a promotion for a particular attraction, or indeed a particular country in this regard. Also, what we can do in transit, we see lots of sophisticated alternatives on this. In terms of this great one from taxis in Stockholm, therapists in the back seats of vehicles provided by Taxi Stockholm to actually, get some more value out of the journey from A to B as well. And there is potential for A to B to become more therapeutic, more slowed down. I love this example we saw from British Airways 18 months ago as well. So this in-flight entertainment is simply watching a 7-hour Norwegian train journey in real time to sort of lull you into sleep. So even, in-flight entertainment can be slow and it can sort of, lure you into sleep. So we need to be more sophisticated and inventive what we can offer in this. So in transit, we often talk about this being part of a holiday, but it's not necessarily dead time. We do want convenience, we do want efficiency, but we want information, we want entertainment, we want to be lulled to sleep as well. And all these places in between offer marketing bottlenecks, as we know. In the digital era, we're very elusive, but these are places where we can be targeted. The A to B needs to be healthier than it is. We need to make it healthier, need to make it more relaxing, need to make it more fun. And, from those examples there, I hope you can see a journey really can be anything. It can be work time, it can be therapeutic, it can be zen-like, but it mustn't be dead time. It's got to be something we make use of in some way. So I hope this has sort of introduced you to some of the trends information we have at Mintel, some of the trends we're seeing which, not travel specific, happening across society and how they can translate to this particular area. So please do get in touch with us if you want to learn more. Thank you very much for having us speak here today. Thank you, WTN. Thank you for coming. Oh, and I've been asked to remind you to use your feedback device.